Hello everybody and welcome back. Last week's video we started about the second concept in the Jude book about the fallen angels as a lesson and a warning for us about how we learned, especially in the Apostle Peter book in the second chapter, when we learned Apostle Peter's second book, we learned in the 4th chapter 5th verse clearly explained about the incident in detail, especially this happened in the time period of Noah during the first flood, of course, and they sinned again, we saw in this period, and it has been recorded in this verse that they have been sent to hell, these fallen angels, for their mistakes in the Noah period. So we can see again, like last week we saw, that the real meaning for this word, the real Greek word, is tartaru, like we saw last week, which meant bounded or imprisoned. And today, before we continue about the fallen angels, we see more about the insight on hell before we understand really about what the angels are, to understand the hell concept and what the hell concept really is. So, in Christian denominations, there is a false doctrine among people. A false doctrine among people. We can understand about the word of hell, as it is a place for people who have done sin to be tormented, it is said. But this is a Satan's lie, of course, once again, to create wrongdoings and understandings about the God's word and truth and God's plan, to create confusion between that. Once someone dies, they either go to heaven, hell, and then their purgatory is also coming into play. This is all part of Satan's play as the false doctrine to confuse the understanding of the truth. However, we can understand and study about the fallen angel sins, though, for today. So we can understand as we're moving towards that point. We understand about the fallen angels. First, let us understand about the hell's topic. However, we understand in the Dark Age period, when Constantinople period, after this, in hours 54 to 58, I explained this about the 1260 days of dark period for church, since all false doctrines were starting to be added, as Constantinople had saw the dream, of course, and the things such as Trinity, idolatry, saints, worship, and hell concept is even added at this point. So let us dive into understand what was really going into the matter a little more deeply. As the Old Testament scriptures, all of which is written in the Hebrew language, which is the main point, there was only one word that is translated to hell in our common version of the English Bible. That word is Sheol, of course. Sheol. This word appears in the Old Testament a total of 65 times. It is translated to hell 31 times, and we can understand that it's translated to, of course, grave, another word that is used to describe this, 31 times, and then the last word, pit, 3 times. Obviously, this inconsistency of translation has been added to the confusion which exists in the public mind with respect to the condition of the punishment of sin. So since we understand the original meaning of the word Sheol is to conceal or cover, was not so much different from that of grave or pit, but added as hell as well, as we can understand in the verse, that the word Sheol is to conceal or cover, which is not so different to grave or pit, which have similar things to do with it and are similar in its meaning. While hell, though, is another one. But they found it impossible to use the word hell in every single translation, of course, when they translated it into the common version of our English Bible, because we understand that in every occasion that the Hebrew word Sheol is used for the most faithful servants of God mentioned in the Bible. In the Bible, if they are placed in torment, this would be a very understanding why this word tormenting or hell is used in this place. So hence, to stop this confusion in this common standard English Bible, they switched back and forth from hell to grave to pit, suited their best purpose, of course. For example, we can take an example of how this takes place. The very first time the word Sheol appears in the Old Testament is used by the good patriarch Jacob, we understand. He supposed his beloved son had been slain by wild beasts, and he was broken-hearted over his great loss, and he was mourning, and he said, I will go down into Sheol unto my son's mourning, we can understand. And when we read this in verse, it is in Genesis 37, chapter 35th verse, which says, all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Okay, so we understand actually in the text that the translation has given us that he will mourn his son, and he will basically go down into Sheol with him, we understand. But in other versions, the text translates to have the word grave actually to be used, for otherwise it we understand it has been used grave. As we can read in the 35th verse, he would actually say, no, he said, I'll continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave, while in our version it actually says, no, I shall go down to Sheol unto my son's mourning. And we can understand that in this text, the translators in other versions, they use grave, of course. And the reason they have to use grave, otherwise it would have been believed that Joseph was in hell and that he expected to go there himself when he died. So we understand that makes no sense, that why Joseph is in hell, and this concept will then be confused that as Joseph was a person who was blessed by God and person who was fully in the faith of God, but yet he is in hell. This misconceptions and misunderstanding will be heavily in the Bible, and we understand that's the way the word grave is used, that Jacob wanted to go, to not create these misunderstandings, of course. But this is, of course, is another brilliant plan by Satan, or cunning plan. We cannot say a good plan, but a cunning plan for him to confuse the truth about the God by creating these mistranslations throughout the Bible, especially for the word Sheol and the word hell wanting to be incorporated into the Bible. And since the word hell is incorporated, we understand that he is trying to incorporate this. And since it's now became a concept in the Bible as a false doctrine after the Constantinople period, we understand that they try to include it according to the point of Tartu, the Greek word in the Old Testament, which is in the Hebrew language. We understand in the word Sheol, and we understand the word Sheol means conceal or cover, when grave or pit, which was the words that were most of the time used, and 64 times used, 5 times used when the word Sheol was done in the Hebrew version. We understand that hell has nothing to do with his word, and it was impossible to use hell in every single occasion, as this would make no sense when you could say some of the most righteous God people were in tormenting for no reason, or they're in this place of hell, as hell was described as this place for fully tormenting for the sins they have done, we understand. So that is, and we can understand why this is a very important thing. We understand how this has changed for hell especially. So we understand how this word hell has been used in the Bible for the purpose, as Satan had deceived the point of time in Constantinople at that time to confuse the truth of the Bible. And due to this, the word hell is incorporated in the Bible and is tried to be put in the Bible in many occasions. And because we understand, as normal people who were reading the Common English Standard Bible would believe what hell really is. But in reality, we know hell is a place of torment. And we understand that the hell word is not a place or thing, but is a false thing that Satan has done. So we understand that many examples of this we even saw about Jacob's incident, where if they tried to make hell one of the words, it would not work in the context. But since it was introduced by Satan as a way to confuse the doctrine, it is confused the doctrine and understanding about God's plan. We understand he puts this false doctrine into play of the point of Constantinople, and due to this we can see that the hell is now in the English Common Standard Bible. So that's all for today. See you next time. Bye.